never stops, making moves, set the plot. What we do, never lose, heading straight to the top.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Money Talks Podcast, episode number 2. It's your host, Eric Lovato, my partner, David Medina. So this episode is pretty special, guys. We're going to go into a deep dive on past deals that we've done in the past, fix and flips out here in Los Angeles County. Super excited for this episode, one, because we're going to basically be going through exactly what we did to fix and flip a property from A all the way to Z, right? And the cool thing about this, I think the goal for this episode is to provide as much value as possible. Get as much questions answered as possible, because a lot of people out there right now that are wondering, how to get started in real estate, and if I do find a property, how I go about, finding the property, one, number two, managing the rehab, coming up with the rehab costs, finding a contractor, managing that, and then after all that, finding out what to sell it for, right? How to negotiate the sales price. So we're going to go into it, guys. Super excited. David, how you doing today, bro?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm excited. I think there's going to be a lot of value in this episode, because we're actually going to go into very specifics as far as, like you mentioned, finding the deal, negotiating the deal, right, and then doing the numbers, because that's the most important part. When you do fix and flip, a lot of people always budget for X amount, and sometimes it ends up being a lot more. So, we'll go through those specifics today.
Awesome. So for this first deal, guys, this one's a little bit special to me.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was my first transaction in real estate that I've ever done. And so it was my first fix and flip. I had no idea what I was doing. And David actually was the one that kind of walked me through this transaction. Through this one transaction, I learned a lot when it came to acquiring a property, managing a rehab, and obviously selling that property for a profit. So we'll go into it. So this property actually right here was in Chatsworth, California, in the Valley, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about this property when you first saw it.
Well, first thing, as far as finding the deal, we have a lot of years of experience in the industry. So one of the biggest thing as far as coming across a deal is networking, whether it be through wholesalers or real estate agents. So this particular deal came through a wholesaler.
Okay, so stop right there. So for people that don't know, what is a wholesaler?
Well, a wholesaler essentially is someone who locks in a deal with a specific seller.
Okay. Meaning
they're doing all the negotiating. They're talking. They're reaching out, whether it be cold calling, whether it be door knocking, etc. Whatever form of marketing that they're doing. So they reach out to a seller directly. They negotiate a price. They lock in the price. Right. So just an example, let's just say they locked in the price at $500,000. Right. So now they have that contract from the seller that they're going to sell it to the wholesaler. Right. For $500,000. Now the wholesaler their job is also now to find an end buyer. Okay. Which would be an investor, kind of like us. Right. And now they'll sell it to us, let's say for $525,000.
Got it.
So they have a contract with the seller at $500,000. Right, and then they find an end buyer or an investor for $525,000. Okay. So that difference of $25,000 is what's referred to as an assignment fee.
Got it.
And that's how the wholesaler gets paid. Okay. So that's just pretty much a very basic breakdown of how the wholesaling industry works.
Got it. So there's different ways to get involved in real estate. Obviously, an investor is one way. Obviously, you can get involved as a wholesaler as well.
Yeah.
Right. You can master that craft, find a property at a discount, get it under contract, and assign that contract to an end buyer, an investor, somebody who's actually going to go in there, buy the property, rehab the property, and then resell it for a profit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned a good part there, because that's probably the easiest or the fastest way to really get into the investment world as far as real estate goes, if you don't have any capital, is to get into wholesaling. Okay. And then, we could break that down as far as what's required, how to, get the data, how to cold call, all that stuff. But, we could talk that in a different episode. But that's probably the first and easiest way as far as getting into investing.
Got it. Okay, cool. So we found this deal through a wholesaler.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what they locked it up at?
Well, I believe they had locked it up. Well, actually, so they locked it up at a certain price. I don't recall the initial price.
Okay.
But when they send it out to us, and when I say us, it's to end buyers, they were asking for $580,000. So again, this is a property in Chatsworth. There was 2 stories. Okay, and it was more in the rural parts of Chatsworth.
Right, I remember that.
Not necessarily in the the downtown area or whatever.
Right.
So it was very difficult. Had very difficult access.
I remember that.
You remember that?
I remember
so,
that. Yeah.
So a lot of people really passed on it, and they were asking for $580,000, and there was comps at the time that were selling for about $700, $750, and all the way up to $850.
Okay.
So what I recall, we made when we did our numbers, and I'll break it down right now, but when we did our numbers, I estimated this selling at around $750, maybe $800,000, because a lot of the underwriting that we do is very conservative.
Right.
So we never look at the best case scenario.
Always at the
Every
worst.
time when we underwrite a deal, we're always looking at the worst case scenario. What's
Right.
the least amount of price that we can get for this?
Right.
And that's kind of we go based from there. We go backwards from there.
So, and I think that's super important when it comes to underwriting a deal. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of new investors out there, they'll go, you know what, this property sold for the highest amount.
Yeah.
This is what I can get for it if I
Right.
rehab the property. And that's
Right.
just not the safe way to underwrite your deals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You always want to go worst case scenario, right? Because you don't want to, like I said, overthink it, like I said, and in a way, give yourself a cushion,
Absolutely.
right? To like I said, give yourself a cushion because this is real estate.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Absolutely.
Markets change, right? So that price that you thought you can get might not be there, and you might have spent more on that rehab thinking you can get that price, and then
Absolutely.
you end up losing money.
Yeah. So we underwrote this deal at about $750. I think that was the amount
Okay.
that we said the after repair value would be.
Okay.
So at $580,000, it just wouldn't make sense.
Right.
And so what I did was, the wholesaler was pretty persistent on the deal. So I said, you know what? Let me throw a number out there, and I said, I need this at $500,000.
Right.
So $80,000 price reduction, and for two reasons. One, I wasn't as interested, to be quite honest with you.
Right. I remember when we walked the property,
Yeah.
you're like, should we take it? Should we
Yeah,
not? You're a
yeah.
little bit hesitant. Yeah.
Yeah. So the comps were there. However, it was just where the location.
Just
of the property
getting there. It was in the hills.
Yeah.
It was hard to get
Yeah.
to. It was in the hills. I remember driving up there, and I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a buyer, it takes a certain type of person to like this. Even going down that slope, right, to get into the driveway.
Right.
So it was a very difficult property, and so yeah, I can see why we were hesitant about it. Yeah.
So I made the offer of $500,000. The wholesaler came back, a week later, said, "Hey, what about $550?" Said $500,000.
That's your number.
That's my number. And that's
Yeah.
another thing is if you're an investor, you can't be emotional about this.
Right.
And I believe that a lot of new people that get into the business, they get very emotional about it in the sense that, they may get excited
Right.
to get a deal going. And so they'll jeopardize, their numbers in order just to get a deal going. Right. So if I would have been in that scenario, I probably would have taken maybe the $550.
Right.
And it would have still worked out because as we go through this,
Right.
you'll find out why. But as a savvy investor, you kind of want to stick to your numbers, and it either works or it doesn't. And the wholesaler or the seller directly either takes it or don't. And
Right.
if they don't, then you just simply move on to the next one.
Right. And so people that don't know or brand new into real estate investing, you make your money on the buy.
Exactly.
Right? You make your money on the buy. And so at what number do you usually like to get your properties at?
Well, see, that's a good question because when we talk to wholesalers, they're always asking, "What's your spread? What's your
Right.
margin?"
Right.
And the reality is that there isn't one specific. We do have a formula.
Right.
However, every deal is different.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're buying a property that's $500,000, $150,000 or $200,000 spread, it's okay.
Right.
It's a good deal, right?
Right.
But let's say now I'm buying $1 million property, $150,000 spread. It's not going to be enough because the rehab cost is probably going to be closer to the six figures.
Got it.
So if all I have is $150,000 in spread that would have worked on a $500,000 property, now it doesn't work on $1 million property.
Right.
You see, so that's why it's just a matter of breaking it down. Usually, rule of thumb, we look at about 60 to 70 cents on the dollar.
Got it.
So if the after repair value, meaning once it's rehabbed, is going to be worth $1 million, then we want to get this usually about $700,000 or below that.
Okay.
Now again, you can jeopardize that once in a while depending on the location and also depending on the market.
Right.
But for the most part, you want to be strict about it. You want to be a disciplined investor. That hey, if it doesn't hit the 70% rule minimum, then you know what, you walk away, you move on to the next one.
Got it.
Yeah. So on this one, like I said, I had the ARV at $750,000 conservatively.
Okay.
Like I said, there was property selling the $850. But just because of the location, I underwrite this at $750,000.
Got it.
So we were, that 70% was about $500,000.
Got it.
So long story short, 2 weeks went by, nobody purchased the property. The wholesaler came back and said, all right, you know what, you'll get it at $500,000. So that's another thing about being persistent and just sticking to your numbers.
Right.
That if I would have jeopardized that and came up to $550,000, I would have paid $50,000 above. You know what I mean? And
right.
that's profit that I leave on the table.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So we ended up closing this deal, or actually, I'll walk you through the process of how we also acquired it. But we ended up locking this up at $500,000.
Next question is, how did you fund the deal? Because there's different ways to fund deals.
Yeah.
So how did you go about this one?
So there's two ways, right? There's two ways. The most common two ways to fund a deal is either you have all cash, right? So in this scenario, having $500,000 liquid, right? Or leveraging and using what's called hard money.
Got it.
Okay. Now, hard money is a little bit different than your conventional financing, your FHA or your 20% down conventional. Right. Hard money is mainly based on the actual project or the deal, the property. They also go based off of your experience.
Right.
So how many transactions have you done in the past?
Right.
And they also want to know what's your exit strategy.
Got it.
So you're buying this for X amount. They want to see how much in rehab cost this is going to cost, right? And then also, what are you going to do with this? You're going to refinance out of it, or you're going to sell it.
Okay, got it. So one, they want to know it's based off really the project, right?
Correct.
The deal, right?
Yeah.
If the deal makes sense, they're going to underwrite it themselves. If the deal makes sense, they know you got it at a decent price. They know you can make money, right? It's all in the deal. They don't look at tax returns, right? They don't look at any of that. It's more of the deal. One, two, your experience. They want to say, hey, can this guy actually go in and actually complete this project, right? So we did this. So back to the question, how did you end up funding this?
Right. So if I just may add to that and be a little bit more specific and break it down. So most hard money lenders, they're going to ask you, how many transactions have you done the last 12 months?
Okay.
So, if you're brand new, that makes it very difficult, right? So at that point, you either have to partner up with somebody who has a history, who has the experience,
right?
Or, some hard money lenders will provide you the loan, but now they're going to really charge you a very high interest rate.
Got it.
So not only are they going to charge you points, 3-4%
right.
of the loan amount.
Yeah.
So in this case, hypothetically speaking, the loan amount is $500,000. 3 to 4%, you're looking at about $15,000 to $20,000 just
to get the loan.
Just to get the loan. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And again, that's because they're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Because you're inexperienced.
Right.
On top of that, the interest rate that they're going to give you is upwards in the 10%.
Wow.
So 10, 11, 12, 13. I've seen even as high as 14% interest.
For first timers that are coming in and trying to build that relationship.
Exactly. Right. So if you don't have any history, you're getting in, it's your first deal, expect to pay a really high cost to get hard money.
Got it.
But then it gets easier from there. And then just to point out, this is an interest-only loan. So these are short-term loans that are technically business loans. Right. So these type of loans are not meant for you to purchase for as your primary residence or to owner occupied.
So they're usually between 6 to 12 months.
Exactly. So there's 6 to 12 months, short-term loans, high interest rate, interest only, and the whole purpose of it is to get in, get out, move on to the next one.
And if you don't, right, at the end of that 12 months, it's a balloon payment, right?
It's a balloon payment, correct, exactly.
So balloon payment basically means that whatever you owe at that point, right, when the time is up, you have to pay all at once.
Exactly.
Okay.
The other thing is also, when you're inexperienced, you're starting off, and then either way, some hard money lenders have different requirements.
Right.
But typically, they ask you to come in with 15, 20, 25. I've even seen 30, 35% down.
Wow.
Right. So luckily for me, I've built good relationships with hard money lenders for the last, decade.
Right.
That I've been able to get 5% down, 10% down on these type of transactions, whereas somebody else would have had to come in with 15 or 20% down.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's go back to this particular deal. So again, purchase price was $500,000.
Okay.
And we actually came down with a 10% down payment on this. Right. So actually, let me go back on this. So when we first started on this transaction, we actually went with a hedge fund. Okay. So one of the lenders that I work with was connected with a hedge fund, and they were offering a 7 7%, 7.5% interest rate,
Right.
interest only for hard money, for fix
Right.
and flips.
Right.
And I think we were only coming in with 5% down for this transaction when we first started, when we went into escrow. Okay. But what happened is a week into escrow, the seller gives us a call, or the wholesaler gives us a call and says, hey, the seller has a foreclosure date.
Right.
Has a sell date, a date that's going to be auctioned, is going to be foreclosed on. So we need to move quickly on this.
Right. So let's explain really quick that situation, right? So that basically means that since the seller has a foreclosure date, if we don't close before that foreclosure date, right, we lose out on the deal.
Yeah. Well, not only do we lose out on the deal, the wholesaler loses out on the deal, and the seller also,
doesn't make any money.
Yeah, loses
right?
the property.
Right.
So we had to switch gears real quick. And the reason why is because the hedge fund, even though we came in with very low down payment, very low interest rate compared to the market, 7%, 7.5 is
unheard of.
It's unheard of.
Yeah.
And we would get those type of deals because of the relationship that I had with the lender, as well as the experience that I had. But the downfall with that is that they needed to do an appraisal. So that's the only downfall. They didn't care for tax returns. They didn't care for for your bank statements or anything like that. But they did need to do an appraisal of their own. And so typically, hard money lenders can close within 3, 4, 5 days, 10 days, and as far as 14 days.
Right.
But this particular lender, because of the appraisal, they required about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So usually it ended up being about 18 to 20 days.
Right.
Which we had an issue with that because, again, there was a foreclosure date that was not mentioned to us in the beginning. Right. But halfway through it, or a week into it, they mentioned, hey, we have about 4 days left before they foreclose on the property.
Got it.
So then we had to switch gears, went to the next lender. We were able to get a 10% down. So our down payment was $50,000. Okay. Loan amount was $450,000.
Okay.
And now we went from a 7.5% interest rate to a 9.99%.
Got it.
Which is pretty typical.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, all right, bought it at $500,000, right? 10% down, $50,000. Loan amount $450 at 9%. Now, let's just say for people out there who don't have $50,000, $60,000,
right,
$70,000 for a down payment, right, on a hard money loan, right? How did you fund the deal? Obviously, you got a hard money, but how did you actually get that income, right, for the obviously the rehab costs and the down payment?
Yeah. So when I underwrote the deal, we came up with the total amount that we needed, which was about $200,000. Okay. Actually, no, I take it back. It was about $160,000.
Okay.
So it was $160,000 was the amount that when I underwrote the deal, it's like, hey, we need cash, and that $160,000 was down payment, was rehab costs, was holding costs. Holding costs is basically the mortgage payment, right? And a bunch of other miscellaneous involved there that added up to about $180,000.
Got it.
So $180,000 is what we needed cash liquid in our bank accounts in order to complete this deal from A to Z.
Right.
So like you said, this was your first deal.
Right.
So on this one, we came in 50-50. You came in with about $80,000. Mm-hmm. I put the other half, and that's kind of how we funded. So in other words, if you're starting off, you want to partner with other individuals. In this case, hypothetically speaking, I didn't have money.
Right.
I brought the deal, and I could have came to you or another person, 2 or 3 individuals or a group or just somebody else and say, hey, you know what? I need $160,000 in order to get this deal. This is how much we're buying it for. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how much we're going to sell it for. And this is how much potentially could be the profit.
Got it.
So either A, you have the funds, or B, in this scenario, we partnered up. We went 50-50. You put 80, I put 80, and that's how we took down this deal.
Got it. So let me stop you there really quick. This episode was brought to you by Luxum Capital. We maximize returns for investors through value-add real estate. If you've been wanting to get involved in real estate and just not know how, or maybe you have some lazy money sitting in the bank not making money, you have an opportunity to become a capital partner with Luxum Capital. What does that mean? That basically means, one, we find highly discounted properties, manage them, rehab them, and sell them for a profit, and you sit back and collect a check. You become an equity partner in every single transaction that Luxum Capital participates in. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, you can reach us at luxumcapital.com. Thanks for tuning in. for people out there, there's a couple of ways to get involved in real estate, and I talked to you about it earlier, right? One is you do it on your own, right? You go out there, you do all this on your own. You find a hard money lender, you pay the price, right, for a first timer, right? And you learn, right? And you make mistakes, or you learn from those mistakes, and hopefully you can rebound from those mistakes and actually make a profit eventually, right? I don't recommend doing it that way. I didn't want to get started in real estate that way. I didn't want to go figure it out. I'm not a dummy. I say, hey, if I know somebody that knows what they're doing and can coach me on it, I'd rather do it that way.
Right.
Second way you can get involved, like you said, is so somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, right? You can find the deal, right? So you can find a highly discounted property, bring it to a seasoned investor, somebody with a track record, somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, and you can partner up that way, right? By bringing value that way, by bringing the deal. Third way to get involved is kind of the way I did it. I had money saved up from my previous business, right? I had some lazy money in the bank. I needed to put it to work. I wanted to get involved in real estate. You show me the transactions that you did in the past. I put money on the table. That's how I brought value to this transaction, right? And through that transaction, I learned a lot, right? And now I know, how to do it from A to Z myself, right? Or the last way to get involved is to just pay for mentorship, right? Pay for somebody's value, pay for somebody's time to teach you and walk you through your first real estate transaction. So I just wanted to mention that for everybody out there listening. There's different ways to get involved. You can pick which way best fits your situation. But for this situation, this was my first transaction. I had money in the bank that wasn't making me money. So I decided to do a JV with you on this particular transaction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So next, rehab costs. When you go into a property and you estimate how much it's actually going to cost, how do you go into that? How do you see what it's actually going to cost, or do you just have a number that you typically use, just a safe number, or do you go in there and look at the property and kind of figure it that way?
So a lot of investors have what's called a price per square foot.
Okay.
Right. Meaning, if the properties were, the size of the property is, let's say, 2,000 square feet.
Okay.
Some investors, they'll use a metric, whether it be $30, $40, $50 per square foot.
Okay.
So on a 2,000 square feet house, if you're pricing it at a $50 per square foot, you're looking at a rehab cost of about approximately $100,000. Okay. So because we use a lot of subs, we don't really use that metric. It's just, and it's also going to be based off of, what are we looking to do with the property? Are we doing a small cosmetic
exit strategy?
Are we doing a cosmetic rehab, or are we doing a full renovation? Right. And so that's going to be determined based off of the location of the property, right? And also the condition of the property.
Correct.
So, if we're buying a property that's in a good area, you definitely want to do a high-end rehab.
Right.
If you want to do a property that perhaps is in a, low income, or, just not a very desirable area, then you might not want to do a full $100,000 rehab. Maybe do a little cosmetic, put it back on the market, etc.
So you kind of have to know who your end buyer is in this, right?
Precisely.
You have to know your product, just like anything. If you're selling anything, you have to know your product and you have to know who your customer is, right?
I love that you said that, because that's exactly how we look at things.
Right.
We look at it as, hey, who is our end buyer?
Right.
And then what type of product are we delivering?
Got it.
So that's exactly how we underwrite every deal, based off location. Another thing I would add is that, although some investors like to stick to one specific area and master that area, which, I would recommend as well.
Right.
We actually tend to just look for deals, all over LA County.
Right.
So sometimes we'll go to the Valley, sometimes we'll go to, San Gabriel Valley, sometimes, San Fernando Valley, sometimes South LA. So, at least because last year the market was very hot, the last couple of years, we were kind of just finding a good deal.
Right.
And so then it does create a situation where if you're not familiar with that area, who the demographics are, who the end buyer is, then you could potentially get into trouble with that as far as the type of rehab you do, and potentially not provide a product that consumer is looking for.
Right.
So, that's where now a lot of research comes in. And and that's kind of a lot of the stuff that I like to do, research, analytics.
And those are the variables that come into real estate investing, right?
Yeah.
It's not you can't have one equation, right, for every transaction you do. You're gonna have different variables that come into it, and that's where people make mistakes in real estate, because those variables come in and you don't know how to actually make them work.
Absolutely.
It's like selling a Lamborghini to somebody that can only afford a Toyota.
Exactly.
Right? Or it's like selling a Toyota to somebody that wants a Lamborghini.
Exactly.
Right? It doesn't really make sense. Okay, so back to the rehab.
And if I may cut you off.
Yes.
In real estate, you talk about location. Literally, if you go north of one street, it's a completely different than when you south of that same main street.
Right.
So it's so small of a difference
Right.
in certain locations that you definitely have to be aware of those areas, because literally just one block north makes a huge difference. It can add an extra $1 million. It can add an additional $200,000-$300,000 on your price. So you definitely have to know your areas.
Got it. Okay, so time frame as far as the rehab, and how much did it cost to actually rehab the property?
Yeah. So on this one, we actually anticipated to be about between $90,000 to $100,000 in rehab.
Okay.
Okay. And again, this is including in this particular deal, we were looking to gut everything out, reposition the kitchen area, do the windows, paint interior.
So this was a full renovation.
It's a full renovation,
Okay.
Electrical, etc. So for something like this, we did budget, roughly, we wanted to be about 85 to 90,000. That's kind of was our goal.
Right.
But we did budget for 100.
Okay.
So that was our original cost of $100,000 on this.
Got it.
Okay. And also we typically budget for 6 months.
Okay.
As far as mortgage payments.
Okay.
Okay. So in this scenario, our mortgage payment was about $3,800.
Got it.
Okay. So typically our rehabs take about 2 to 3 months for the construction to be completed. But we typically budget about 6 months of holding costs,
Right.
which are 6 months of mortgage payments.
Correct.
Again, and that's anticipating that we're going to be done in 2 months.
Right.
Put it back on the market, take about 30 days, get into escrow for another 30 days with the end buyer,
Right.
with the retail buyer. So we're looking at about, on average, we're in and out in about 4 months.
Right.
But
But you
we
underwrote it for 6.
we always underwrite every deal for about six months. And again, this was last year, in 2022, the beginning of, actually, I lied.
21.
It was the end of 2021.
Right.
We bought it at the end of 2021, and we were looking to sell this in the beginning of 2022, meaning the market was still hot. For now, in this current market today, we would probably be adjusting, instead of 6 months, we would probably be looking about 8 months of holding costs.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So it says here total cost, project costs. We budgeted for 100,000.
Yeah, yeah.
It says total cost here 175,000. So what happened there?
So, well, the rehab was 100,000 is what we budgeted, and
Okay.
it ended up being 120,000.
Okay.
So we actually went $20,000 above
Okay.
our construction budget, and the reason for that is because, again, this was a 2-story
Right.
house. It was up in the hills of Chatsworth, kind of rural area,
Right.
and it had a very beautiful view of just the San Fernando Valley.
Right.
So what we decided to do is to add a deck.
Because when we got the house, there was a deck, but it wasn't finished.
Well, no.
Or there wasn't a deck at all. I can't remember.
You know what? There's framing
There's
that we
framing.
thought it was a deck, but it was already falling apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
there really wasn't a deck.
Yeah.
But it gave us the idea of, you know what? We should probably build a deck, because that would be the selling point.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a deck upstairs and a deck
Yeah.
downstairs.
So we did a 2-story deck.
Right.
Right. On both sides,
Right.
or on both floors, and that ended up costing about $15,000
extra.
extra.
Just the deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that $20,000 that we decided to increase the budget and go above our budget,
Right.
was for the purpose of selling the property at a much higher price. So originally we had underwrote this at $750,
right.
And we figured, all right, you know what? Adding this deck, this $15,000 or $20,000 extra, will potentially give us an extra $50,000 in purchase price.
Got it.
So we ended up doing that. Rehab was $120. We had about $22,000 in budget for holding costs.
Okay.
Again, 6 months. And the thing is, if we're out in 3 months or 4 months, then that's money that we're saving.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then, in our project costs, we also have marketing, and we have utilities. So part of the utilities, it's usually about $1,000 that we use.
Right.
And that's power. We put gas at the end as well.
Right.
But typically for the workers, because they can have power to use their tools and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah. So typically we underwrite about $1,000. We actually only use $500 on this one. And so long story short, we spent a little bit more than what we anticipated.
Right. And this happens.
It happens all the
This
time.
happens. And this is exactly why we go back to it, where you underwrite your deal accordingly, because you have to have that cushion, because things do happen.
Yeah.
Things like this happen, right? Well, hey, we needed to add a deck. Obviously, we added a deck. It made sense at the end of the deal. We'll find out right now that adding that deck is very crucial, right, to getting this property sold. So, okay, cool. So as far as resale price, Okay, so when it comes, let's say the property's done, rehab is complete, right? How did you come up with this resale price? Because it was totally different from 750.
Yeah. So once again, it helped that the market, just was on fire. It helped that the market just kept going up.
Right.
It helped that interest rates were very low.
Right.
So for every one property that was on the market, there was at least 10 buyers looking to purchase. So, we kind of got lucky on that, but we ended up listing this at $799, basically $800,000.
Okay.
So once we were completed with everything, we listed the property at $800,000, and we actually ended up closing at $905,000.
Hold on. So listed at 799.
Yeah.
Ended up closing at 905.
05. Yeah.
So this is kind of, like I said, people are probably like, what happened? Well, we have to remember where the market's at, right?
Yeah.
You have to know where the market's at when you're, in the process of doing a fix and flip, right? You have to know whether it's a buyer's market or whether you're in a seller's market. At that time, this was a seller's market. People were overbidding, just trying to get into a house because money was so cheap then, right?
Correct.
It was very affordable to get a house. I think the interest rates were the lowest they ever been. Right? And so that's where you have to figure out, hey, this is where the market's at right now. This is our exit strategy. You know what I mean? So 799 to 905.
Yeah, and
Continue.
so just to add to that, when you underwrite a deal, when you mentioned it earlier, you make money on the buy.
Right.
So since we bought it at $500,000, right, there was enough spread there that even if we sold this at $800,000 or even at our original price of $750,
right,
we're still making at least a 20% minimum, 20% return.
And that's where you underwrite your deals. You want to make at least a minimum of 20%.
Correct.
Right?
That's another thing is, as an investor, you don't want to look at the dollar amount that you're earning.
Right.
You want to look at percentage. What's my return on investment? What's my ROI? So, because everything is relevant, right? If I'm investing $10,000 with somebody and I'm earning a 20% return, right? That's $200. You're going to say, well, $200 for a year, that's nothing. That's chump change.
Right.
But now if you invest $1 million at 20%, that's $200,000.
It's a different story.
Now $200,000, you're like, okay, that's pretty significant.
Right.
So you don't want to look at how much money am I going to earn. It's more of what's my percentage, what's my return, right? Because everything is relevant to how much you're actually investing.
Right.
So as an investor, because I talk to a lot of people and they're always talking about, well, how much am I going to make? And it's like, hey, don't look at the dollar amount because it's relevant to how much you're going to invest.
Right.
You got to look as an investor. Anytime you invest in anything, you want to look at what's my return on investment, what's my percentage.
Right.
So for us, we're always looking at a minimum of 20% return.
Got it.
So in this scenario, even though if we would have listed this at $799, we would have gotten an offer at $800,000 and we would have sold it, we're still looking above 20%. We're still looking at 25, maybe even 30% return on this just because we bought it so cheap.
Right.
So the other thing to that is because we also priced it low enough compared to the comparables in the area. So remember I talked about earlier that there were comparables in the 850.
Right.
So the pricing of 905 wasn't necessarily an extreme price because there was comparables in the 850, even 900,000 price range.
So it wasn't out of the ballpark.
So yes, to add to it, it did help that the market was hot.
Right.
It did help that there was free money, essentially, low interest rates.
Right.
But it also helped the fact that we were able to price this low at 800,000 for a property that was 2 stories, brand new deck, brand new kitchen, brand new everything, electrical, plumbing, windows, paint job, everything.
Right.
So the product was very pristine, and it looked like it was at a sale.
Right.
Compared to everything else that was selling in the area.
Right.
So yeah, we did get multiple offers to the point that the offer we went with was $100,000 above our asking price.
Right.
And it did appraise.
It did appraise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, this was first one, and let me ask you this. So, if you can go back at this deal, right? We can go back and in time. What would you have done different, if anything?
Well,
why are you laughing?
Well, see, here's the thing. We're located in LA. Right. And so Chatsworth in this particular property is roughly about 45 minutes to an hour away, especially with traffic.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we've learned throughout our, the last couple of years is is having control, or at least having properties that are nearby, just so
Right.
you can have access at least within 30, no more than 40-minute drive.
Right.
So one of the things is, having a project manager that it was constantly going there every day.
Right.
Typically I like to go to the properties myself.
Right.
But as we scale and we have multiple projects,
Can't be everywhere at once.
Can't be exactly. So we
Yeah.
definitely want to have, we learned to hire a project manager.
Right. Yeah, we did.
And at the same time, make sure that they're going there every day. So one of the things I would have done differently is having somebody go there every day and visit the contractors, because
Right.
again, if the contractors don't see anybody on top of them, then
They'll take their time.
They'll take their time.
Right.
So
and every day is money.
every day is money, because that
Yeah.
hard money, is charging you interest every single day.
Every single day.
So that's the first thing I would do, is make sure that you have a project manager that is consistently going to projects on site every day, right? Just to
Right.
make sure that the contractors are on top of their thing.
Right.
Because again, on this particular deal, they took longer than expected. It was supposed to be a 60-day, in and out construction.
Right.
Ended up being 4 months.
Right.
Right. Now, luckily for us, it actually helped us just because of where the market was.
Right.
But in a different market, in this market that we're in right now, those 2 extra months could potentially, killed us on this deal.
Absolutely.
So that's probably the biggest thing I would take away, is having the project manager on site every day.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So,
All right. So we ended up at the end of the day, like I said, you said you wanted to focus on the actual percentage.
Yeah.
Right. So we bought the property at 500, right? We put 240 into it, right? And we resold it at 905.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the cash required was $240,000 for this one.
Right.
And again, that includes down payment, that includes holding costs, that includes rehab costs.
Right.
That includes marketing.
Right.
Utilities. And so total, it ended up being $240,000 cash that we required. And then at the end, we sold this for 905. And this ended up netting us a 64% return.
Wow.
Yeah.
64%.
Meaning we used $240,000 cash, liquid,
Right.
out of pocket.
Right.
And we net a profit of $154,000 on this one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was your first deal.
That was my first deal, guys. So that was my first deal in real estate. Obviously, after that first deal, I was sold. I told myself real estate is the end goal for me. And so this one you can say, this one I can say this is a home run.
This is a home run.
This is considered a home run.
This is considered a home run. I wouldn't necessarily, advise, people to really expect these type of returns every single time.
Right, right.
But this was a home run. And just to kind of give a little bit more perspective here, you invested $80,000
Right.
and you made $51,000 on this one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank
So it was almost almost 100% return. You almost double your money in a matter of 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of real estate. You gotta love real estate, right?
But again, I got advice. We don't get all these type of deals all the time.
No, absolutely not. Obviously, the market was hot. Obviously, it was a different time, right?
Absolutely.
So I was able to experience that. And we'll go on to more deals as well, guys, right now, that we'll see that, not every deal is a home run, right? You'll have some deals that are base hits, doubles, triples, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, sometimes you get a unicorn like this, right? You get a unicorn like this and you get something that, just works out in your favor.
Yeah.
Highly in your favor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you also get some deals where shit happens, bro.
Right.
Something happens and it doesn't work out in your favor,
Exactly.
right? So we'll go into that. So just off that deal, like I said, guys, I learned a lot. Like I said, that's why I chose that way to get involved in real estate was, partner with somebody with a proven track record that can actually, walk me through this transaction. And through this transaction, man, I learned everything. I learned everything from acquiring a hard money loan.
Exactly.
I learned everything from rehab, right? I learned everything about, contractors. I learned everything about construction. I learned everything about negotiating commissions, right?
Right.
And it turned out to be a great transaction.
Yeah. So that was, again, that's your first deal. You get involved. And here's the beauty of it. You walked away now with a relationship with a hard money lender that
Right.
if you ever wanted to go on your own and get a deal, now you have a good rapport with them
Yeah.
because I was able to introduce that.
Right.
And instead of you getting, with the 3%, 4%, origination cost and a 13 or 12% interest rate, now you're going to get the same deals that I'm getting.
Right.
Right. So that's one takeaway. Second is, again, contractors, right? Again, you end up buying properties on your own. Now you have that connection as well.
Right.
And lastly, I think, a lot of investors start off with fix and flipping,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like the entry way
Right.
in order to, segue into more, buy and hold type of deals, apartment
Right.
building, et cetera, and start building a portfolio.
Right.
So it's just like with anything, you get started entry level, and I would consider this to be entry level as far as fix and flip.
Right.
And you did it, the right way, the safe way, which is partnering up with somebody, and now what we're doing is segueing into building a portfolio.
Right.
So, sometimes, people have the ability to just automatically jump into just, buying and building a portfolio.
Right.
But some people just really, they have a certain amount of money. They fix and flip in order to double that money within 2, 3, 4 years.
Right.
You start off with 100,000, 4 years from now, 5 years from now. Maybe now you have $500,000. Maybe now you have $1 million.
Right.
And now you go ahead and start investing long term and buying apartment buildings, et cetera.
Got it. So what would you tell somebody right now that wants to get started in real estate, and just doesn't know how to actually, get involved?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll leave that up to you to explain.
Yeah.
However, I will say, particularly in this current market, my advice would be to partner up with somebody. If you do have cash,
Right.
And you're looking to get into real estate, whether that be fix and flip or buying property,
Right.
definitely partner up with somebody because the market is pretty scarce right now, and it's there's a lot of uncertainties.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But
Okay.
maybe you want to elaborate on what are the other 3, 4 options that are
Well,
available.
that's what I mean. My option. I mean, my opinion is kind of, I would say, biased, just because I chose the way that I got involved, and it turned out to be a great fit.
Yeah.
I think for most people out there right now that want to get involved in real estate and just don't know how, I think the best way would be to partner up with somebody who has experience. That's kind of like a no-brainer if you think about it. Like, if you want to acquire a new trait, new skill, right? Learn from somebody that has what you want. Say what they say, do what they do, get what they get. That's how I learned it.
Yeah.
And that's a mentor.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one way to do it. Partner up with the company. For example, Luxum Capital, right? I saw this transaction, mind-blowing, that I can come into this not knowing anything about. I want you guys to know, really, I had no idea. I knew I wanted to get involved in real estate. I didn't know anything about real estate, right? So I came into this as a newbie, and through this one transaction, I learned everything I needed to learn as far as how to invest in real estate, and came out with a great return as well. But I saw that mind-blowing. I told David, look, there's people just like me out there that want to learn this. Right. Don't know how to get involved, right? Maybe they have some money in the bank. Maybe they don't, right? But maybe they can go out there and find a deal. There's people just like me that want to get involved. This is a service, right? This is something that's, somebody can come to us and say, hey, I want to get into real estate. One, I want to learn. Or, hey, you know what? I don't want to learn. I have some lazy money in the bank. I just wanted to put to work. Right?
Yeah.
They can get involved, right? And become a capital partner with us. And, one, if they want to learn, we'll walk them through what we do.
Right.
And if they don't, they can just sit back and collect the check when we sell a property for a profit. So that's my opinion on a way to get involved in real estate is partner up with somebody who has a proven track record, has experience, and can walk you through that and is willing to teach you and show you exactly how to do that. That's my opinion. So for anybody out there looking to want to get involved in real estate, that's the way to do it. You can reach out at us as well. And if you want to be get in on our next deal, right? I highly recommend that. I'm gonna send the invitation out to everybody out there that if you want to get involved in our next deal, we're looking for capital partners all the time.
Right.
We have deals that come across our desk every single day, right, that are highly discounted, especially in this market. And where the market's going, where we think the market's going, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, right, to make money, right? So we're excited for that. We're going to call it, this is one deal. There's multiple deals that we're going to go over. Obviously, this is just one deal. I think we're on our 12th transaction since we met, right? So there's multiple deals that we've done. They're not all, grand slams like this one, right? But we're going to go over this. And so if you guys got value out of this, I want to ask everybody out there to, just leave a comment, leave a 5-star review, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. We're going to be doing this all the time. We're going to try to provide as much value as possible, and not just in real estate. I want to let people know that. Not just real estate. We'll talk real estate, but this is money talks, right? We're going to talk anything money, anything finance, anything entrepreneurship, mindset. We're all into that. So we're super excited for this podcast, guys. So thanks again for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, share with a friend. With that, we'll segue out, and we'll see you guys on the next show.
Money talks, never